Hi and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be chatting about what to do if you're scared of what other people think. So this week's series is all about this topic, and on the blog I am sharing how to stop caring about what other people think and lots of practical exercises you can do. But it does take a lot of personal development work to really get yourself out of that mindset where you are trying to avoid the shame that we feel when we get rejected and abandoned and all of that. I really do believe that even though everyone's always talking about how our fear of what other people think just comes from that human instinct of, like, back in the day, if we were abandoned or rejected by the tribe, we would literally die because we were out on our own. But I really do feel that in my personal experience, my fear around what other people think has been me trying to avoid that really painful feeling of shame that happens when you have the thought that you've been rejected or abandoned, or that people don't like you, or there's something wrong with you. So that's what I'm talking about on the blog. And there's a free workbook as always, and in the podcast episode I really go into my whole journey with my fear of what other people think, because it has been such a journey. And I feel like now I'm really in a place where I care much less about what other people think, but also that when I do care, I can still keep acting and keep doing things anyway despite that fear. So in this video I really want to just chat about a few of the different things you can do if you do find that you have a lot of fear around what other people think and you haven't gotten over that fear, but what you can do to keep, like, living your best life and going after your dreams and goals, because often it's this fear that really holds us back. And I would hate for you to keep holding yourself back, and I have been there myself. So I just thought I would share a few of the things that I did when I was really so scared of what other people think. So make sure you listen to the podcast episode if you want to hear, like, my whole journey with it, because it's been a long one and it's still going. I'm not, like, you know, just never caring about what other people think, but yeah, I've come a long way. So the first thing that I would recommend doing if you have a lot of fear around what other people think, particularly if it's in terms of, like, a decision you've been thinking of making or something you're planning to start, then hide your goal. Or, like, not, I don't know how to describe this, but, like, when I started my blog, Smart 20s, I was so scared of what people would think. I had such a low opinion of myself at the time that I assumed everyone around me had that opinion of me as well. And I was just terrified of that, of my opinion of me being reflected back to me. So I hid my blog, and meaning, like, I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even tell Steve, and we'd been dating for 5 years at that time. I was just so scared that as soon as someone found out about my blog, they'd be like, what the fuck are you doing? And that they would just laugh at me. And because I didn't believe in myself, if anyone had laughed, I swear to God, I would have immediately shut down my blog, because I just had such little belief in myself. So I really believe that if I had tried to share it with people at that stage in my personal growth journey, like, I would have quit. I don't really think, though you never know what would have happened. And it turned out that when I told everyone, that they were really supportive and curious, because a lot of people didn't know about blogging, and also a lot of them really inspired and told me that they had also, like, done the same thing in private, or they'd been planning to start their own blogs and their own things. So yeah, if you are wanting to do something, even though I know the advice that's normally given is to put yourself out there, share it with friends and family, and also with something like a blog or a business, that's how you can get the initial momentum. But if that scares the shit out of you, don't be afraid to just keep it to yourself and nurture it. Or if you're thinking of say changing careers or just some big decision that you feel like there'll be a lot of backlash. And as I was saying before, I had feared so much backlash about my blog that never came. It was all completely imagined. And I talk about that in the blog post, how there's really this, like, the fear of what other people think is usually completely imagined. Like, we're making assumptions about what they think, or really I think a lot of the time we think they think what we think about ourselves. So that's why in the blog post as well, I go through some things that you can do to improve your self-confidence. Not little confidence boosters. I don't believe in them. Like, actually increase that self-confidence in a long-term sustainable way, not like a band-aid or anything all those little bits of advice about confidence normally seem to be. So yeah, I really recommend at first, if you are struggling to share an idea or if it just freaks you out, don't feel ashamed about that. The other thing as well is that, as I was saying, we're often trying to avoid shame, but then we'll feel like with my blog, I felt ashamed about it for no logical reason. I talk about it more in the podcast episode, like the history behind that. But I felt ashamed about it, and then I felt ashamed that I felt ashamed, and it just made it so much worse. So if you do just need to nurture your goals and nurture your decisions in private before you share them with people, including those closest to you, don't feel bad about it. It's totally okay. And I think a lot of people actually do it but don't really talk about it, which is why I do want to talk about it. So that is definitely my first tip. My second tip is to not let your fear of what people think get in the way. And I get a lot of emails from you guys saying that you're really scared of what people think. And as I was saying, it's usually because we have such a low opinion of ourselves that we assume that everyone around us has that same low opinion, even though they usually don't. So if you do find that you are having this fear of what other people think, and you guys are always like, how can I stop this fear or stop feeling this, which I talk about in the blog post, like what you can do. But I would like to offer to you that maybe that fear will kind of be there all the time. And I do think on some level it is human nature to really want to feel connected, and I don't know, just the way that we grow up, where we are kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say brought up to be people pleasers, but you know, we are brought up on being nice to people. No, I'm not saying, now I'm like getting all confused. I'm not saying not to be nice to people, but we often value like what we do for others over what we do for ourselves. And I just think that, yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what I'm saying here. But if you have the fear of what people will think, it might always be there, and you can just learn to act when it is there. And I think we do this in a lot of ways, that we are like, oh, how can I get the fear to go away so I can get started? That's not the right way. You have to learn how to start while the fear is still there. That's what courage is, literally acting when you have fear. I think a lot of the time when we talk about people being brave and courageous, because we idolize that so much, it's like, oh, that must feel good to be really courageous. But it literally means doing something when you feel fear. If you don't feel fear, it's not courage. So you have to learn to develop your courage and to just start doing things when you feel scared. All of the things that I've started, I have felt terrified when I started. And the good thing is that when you do things more often and more often, they become normal, and then you have less fear. But I don't know if it ever gets down to zero, but I don't think there's any trick to it either, because a lot of you guys say like, how can I feel the fear and do it anyway? There's no trick. You have to feel the fear and do it anyway. And there are different ways you can manage your mind. And I would say that the biggest thing that helps me is knowing that typically when I have an idea about something, for the first, or until I've started, I'm usually pretty excited. And then whenever I try to start, pretty much very reliably in the next 24 to 48 hours, I will doubt everything and want to quit. Like, it's so, like, when I've started, actually, except for my podcast, but I think because I was already, I don't know, with the podcast, I've just thought about it differently, but with YouTube, definitely with my blog, it took me like 3 months to post my first blog post. So many different things. I'm like so excited, and so many different projects while I've been blogging. I get so excited, and then as soon as I start, or as soon as I start taking those first few steps and it starts to become real, my brain is just like, what the hell are you doing? You need to stop this. This is the dumbest idea you've ever had. Everyone's gonna laugh at you. That happens reliably in the 24 to 48 hours that follow me starting something. So I would say, if you are starting something new or making a big decision, when you freak out, expect, like, be like, oh, this is the normal part of like me freaking out when I'm trying to do something big. And that's the way I try to see it. I don't listen to that fear and self-doubt that comes immediately after a big decision, because normally it's just my brain being like, what the hell, we were comfortable, we were fine, why are you trying to do anything different? And so yeah, it's just really important in that immediate time following starting something new that you don't listen to your doubts. They're not you, they're just you freaking out and wanting things to stay the same, but it's not what you should follow. So that is my second tip. And the third one, and this is something that hugely helped me, is to surround yourself with people that make your ambitions and your goals and whatever it is you're trying to do feel normal. And I think this is the magic in surrounding yourself with like-minded people. When everyone around you is doing what you want to be doing, it seems normal. And when something seems normal, it's just that much easier to achieve, because you don't have this like voice in your head saying like, I'm not normal for wanting this, or like, this can't happen because I don't know anyone else who's done it. It just really makes such a difference when the people around you are trying to do the same thing. Because if you try to do anything, always, pretty much always, there will be someone who doesn't think it's a good idea. Often they're coming from a very well-meaning place. They're trying to protect you. They're trying to save you any negative emotions in the future by bringing them forward. Usually, it's funny the way we do this. We try and save ourselves from future disappointment by being disappointed now. Like, we let ourselves down in the present so that we don't let ourselves down in the future. Like, that's a whole other thing. But if you don't have people in your real life, so you can go to like meetup.com to find groups who are doing similar things. Usually there are like conferences and online groups and everything, that I do recommend, if possible, in person is the best. But if you can't do that, podcasts. And I think this is why before I was saying I had a different mindset around the podcast when I was starting it. I've just been obsessed with podcasts since 2013. They are what convinced me to start a blog, because every day in my ears I was listening to business podcasts just because I didn't want to listen to the radio and all the ads and just 2-minute songs and all of that. So I found the TED Talk podcast that led me to business podcasts. I had no interest in starting a business, but I love psychology and the mindset side of things. So I found the business stuff really fascinating. But then when you listen to people talking about, and this is what I was saying, when it becomes normal, you're like, oh, I could do that too. I had people talking all day in my ears, because I listen like 24/7, talking about how they created their businesses and all the obstacles they overcame and all the doubt they experienced, and just so much of that stuff that I was just like, oh, maybe I could do this too. And then once I started, I just kept listening to them, and they really made it feel more normal. And I feel that if I didn't have those podcasts in my ear telling me that it was okay and that I could do it and giving me advice, that it would have been very, very challenging. So if you're trying to do something and you don't have people around you that are supportive, or you just like don't feel comfortable telling the people around you, as I mentioned like in the first tip, if you need to nurture your goal in private, that's completely okay. So if that's the case, I definitely recommend finding some podcasts or even some YouTube channels. So podcasts are good because you can listen to them when you're multitasking and just like I'm not the kind of person that when I'm listening to podcasts, I don't sit down with a notebook. I love just listening to them and like hearing what I hear and letting my mind just sort of mull over things. I don't kind of study podcasts. Though if I do love an episode or I think that there's really valuable information in an episode, I will literally listen to it 20 times. And I find that every time I listen to it, I pick up something that I hadn't heard in the previous time I listened. So if you find some good podcast episodes, it can be amazing to just listen to the same ones on repeat again and again and again. Well, that's what I do. So yeah, they are my tips. If you are really struggling with what other people think, then you can nurture your goal in private. You can learn to feel the fear and do it anyway, which, as I said, there's no real trick. You just have to do it. It's kind of just like, I haven't done bungee jumping, but you know when you're like, and I just never want to do it, but anyway, you know when you're like about to do something, you have like all of those nerves / excitement, because it feels the same, but all of that, and then you just have to like literally count down and force yourself to do it. It's like that. Like you're never, if you wait until you feel like there's no fear around it, you're never going to do it. And also I think if you don't have that fear around it, it kind of indicates that it's in your comfort zone. So yeah, so that's number 2. And number 3 is to surround yourself with people who make you and your goals feel really normal and okay. And yeah, definitely recommend podcasts or YouTube channels or blogs as well, but I love podcasts. So if you want to learn more about how to stop caring what people think, then make sure you check out the blog post and the free workbook, because I've got a whole series of different exercises that will help you with managing your mind around what other people think, but also like, I think it really has nothing to do with other people. It's really all about you, and it's just another element of personal growth. So make sure you check out the blog post and the workbook. And I've loved seeing you guys posting my workbooks and stuff on your Insta stories. Like if you are doing them, please make sure you tag me or just send me an email, because I love that they are helping you guys. And I also have the podcast episode where I chat through my journey with everything and like the whole evolution and different things that have helped along the way and all of that. So it's all linked below, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.